Oh no. Way overkill for this project. I finally decided what I want to put in this beautiful pot. It is a beautiful morning out in the garden today, and I've brought out a few things that are overdue in need of planting. It's actually still a little bit early in the season for some of these, but we desperately need to get them planted. And they're all very interesting things too. This is not just your typical tomatoes and peppers, which I also have a lot started. This is a sweet potato. You probably recognize this, but this is a cutting. I have two of them actually. These are two sweet potato cuttings that I took off of the plants that I grew last year. And those plants were started from a sweet potato, just like this, that I started indoors. I think I found them in the cupboard already starting to sprout eyes, but you can help speed along that process by putting it somewhere warm. I've got one right now above the light above my stove because that cupboard stays nice and warm. You could also nestle it about halfway into a tray of potting mix, keep it damp. The warmth is the key though to getting these going, and it'll root and start sprouting slips before you know it, at which point you can just twist them off, root them in water or directly in soil, and then get them going that way. I've done videos about that before, so I'll link those here at the end. But that's a great way of getting your own sweet potato plant started just by something that you pick up at the grocery store. And so these poor things, they're not doing so hot. They look perfectly fine on the top growth, but these sat in water for a really long time, really long time, way longer than they should have. So we're gonna pot those up. I've got potatoes that I'd like to get into a pot too. These are also just from the grocery store. They're ones that I went to cook supper, found some little sprouts, so I set them aside. We'll just get some early baby potatoes. They're small as they are. So this is ginger, also picked up from the grocery store. And I also have turmeric, which grows much the same way, but it's a lot smaller. These two I picked up at the same time. Just placed them on a heat mat next to some pots of amaryllis that I had rooting, and that was enough to get these going. You could do the same thing though, sit them in damp soil on a heat mat, in which case they will root and end up getting going a little bit faster. Because this was just sitting out, it's lost a little bit of moisture. It has some really nice growth points, but that growth is a little bit soft because it hasn't had any way of getting moisture. All of this has just come from moisture and energy within the root itself, and it does have a few more nice green growth points on it. There, so the turmeric, there seem to be a lot in here. Looks like there's a whole bunch of pieces. Now I've grown all of this before. I've grown sweet potatoes a couple of times. I've grown ginger most of the last 5 or 6 years, often in the greenhouse, usually in the greenhouse. And I grew turmeric just last year to moderate success, hoping to do better this year. So let's see what we're dealing with here. Gently. Those look pretty good. Look at all of the sprouts on those. We can totally plant that just as is. And there's a couple of good ones on that. So this is just organic turmeric picked up from the grocery store and placed on heat in a sunny windowsill for a good couple of months though. This is something you'd want to start in February, and it's now April. So in addition to all of these things, I have a bay tree that needs potting up today. I have some lettuce, some mustard greens, beautiful looking. I'm probably going to have some of those for lunch. Some little green onions. I also have 6 of these little dwarf cypress trees. So over the weekend, my local greenhouse hosted a sip and stroll event where they had beverages and snacks and live jazz band. Actually, it was really lovely. And you could have a drink if you wanted and stroll around the greenhouse. They have mostly hanging baskets and potted planters for your step. They do mostly wholesale. This is not a greenhouse where you can just walk in and buy. So it was really nice to be able to look around at their operation. And I do know quite a few people who work there. So they did have a few things for sale. These are just lovely tactile. These are Cypress L. Woodii. Let me check the tag. Yes, I got that right. Cypress L. Woodii. Now the tag says it grows to 1.5 meters, so it's definitely a small dwarf type cypress. And I thought they might look really good in 2 matching planters on either side of the front door. So that's my plan for those, but looking them up online, it also said that it could get 3.5 to 4 meters tall, the same variety. So I'm going to be prepared for that occasion. They were selling these for $5. So I picked up 2. Then I thought, that's dumb. I'm going to get home and wish I'd bought a whole lot more. So I bought 6. What I'm going to do today is pot them up because we're still getting kind of cold at night. I'm going to pot them from these little 3-inch pots to, these are much bigger. I'm not sure the exact size, but they definitely need potting up. And the way you can tell is that these roots, they're completely engulfing the side and the bottom of the pot. So they're ready for something bigger. So we're gonna do the turmeric and the ginger first because that is gonna go back in the house. There, just filling a seed tray. I did toy with the idea of putting these in the greenhouse, but it's still getting a little bit chilly at night and I don't wanna commit to having to come out and wrap it up with frost cloth every single night. It's much warmer during the day in the greenhouse, but if we get a few days with no sun and it's chilly and we're getting freezing temperatures at night, I think what I'll do is leave it in the greenhouse for the day, bring it in this evening, and then wait a couple of weeks before moving them out permanently. So what I'm going to do with the turmeric and the ginger for now, until it gets a bit more growth, is I want to root it before I plant it out in case some of these fail. So I'm just going to nestle them about 1 inch down in the soil, just barely cover them, and then let them root. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing with our ginger. That's just enough room. That is perfect. So next thing I'm going to do is water it. I have filled my giant watering can. There we go. So this is warm water because turmeric and ginger above everything needs to be warm. So I'm just going to go pop this in the greenhouse next. It's getting a little crowded in there. It's also 25 degrees Celsius, which is beautiful. For the cypress, I'm just going to pop them out. There, so I'm just going to center these. I think it might be smarter to do this over my bucket. I'm very excited for these. Shrubs are not cheap, so when you can get them smaller, even though some of them are quite slow growing, this one is said to be fairly slow growing. So I'm hoping that I can get a good couple of years out of it in the pot before having to replace it. There. Giving it a shake. You want to make sure you fill in all those gaps. I'm filling the pots just enough that I can sit the root ball on top, and it's a little bit lower than the depth of the pot. Filling around it and giving it a shake. Lovely. I did mix in a little bit of balanced feed with this. Just an all-purpose, equal amounts of everything, but just a little bit. I'll give it something a little bit more shrub and evergreen specific when it goes into its new place. I went and got 2 more of these for the sweet potatoes. Same reason, they are not ready to be planted out, not by any means. Sweet potatoes are very much warm season crops, and I'm not sure what the roots look like because when I potted these up, they didn't have many. So let's have a look. Oh, that's pretty nice. Not very deep. I'm going to break this up a little bit. Okay. That may be the beginning of a little sweet potato right there. I'm actually glad when I did this last year and left them potted up for too long, they actually started to grow tiny little sweet potatoes in the pot. So I'm glad that did not happen. So getting the old soil off because I don't know if it had any nutrition in there to begin with. I can't remember what I did. And then we're going to put them in the pot. Soil level is to here, so I'm going to bury it to there. Sweet potatoes can root from their node, so it's going to grow roots all the way up that stem as long as it's buried. And hopefully it will forgive me for all of the drying out that's occurred over the last few months. There. I think these are going to go back in the house too. They have not been hardened off at all. When it starts to get a bit warmer at night in the greenhouse, then I'll bring them out. That one's going to go a little bit deeper, I think. Okay, so that one is getting buried to there. There we go. I'm just gonna move these out of the way because that'll make it easier to water them without creating a giant mess. Oh, we're gonna do the bay next. I finally decided what I want to put in this beautiful pot, and that is my bay tree. It was drying out way too fast indoors in this little pot, so I'm sure it needs potting up, and that is the perfect size difference. So, looks like a couple of inches. This one's going to need some feed too. I've lost all my stuff. Oh, there it is. This is the same thing I used when I was planting the ranunculus. It's just a 5-3-2, so not completely balanced across the board. These would be the bay leaves that you get in the spice section of the grocery store. But it's also a lovely little house plant. I believe they are hardy in the UK. Don't quote me on that. I know they can take some frost and maybe a little bit of freeze. That's something I'll have to look up. So it moved out to the greenhouse last week. It stays indoors over the winter. I'm sure it has good roots since it dries out so fast in the pot. Oh yeah, and they're circling the bottom too, so loosening them isn't 100% necessary, but there, just a little bit. And I'm actually gonna break a few off of the bottom. I'll get some of the soil off the top. There we go. Let's see how that looks. Lovely. This is a good opportunity too if you have something growing slightly sideways from being indoors all winter. You can just shift the angle of the root ball and fix it. There. Same thing as the cypress. I'm wiggling it around, giving it a tap. We want to make sure that there's no giant air pockets. Watering it will take care of most of it, but whoops. There. I might not even get to these potatoes today. There's the bay tree. I was going to do an experiment where I plant potatoes in pots for 2 weeks before moving them out into something bigger. There's probably a reason nobody does that. That might be an experiment that I save for another year. Why not? We have pots right here. I'm only going to do the ones that show growth though. How about? So I would be surprised if this hadn't already been tried. There's probably a reason it doesn't happen, but why not? Then at least we'll know for sure, right? There, we will do 4 and we will see what happens. Today is April the 15th. Let's give these 2 weeks, plant them up into their permanent spots, and see what happens from there. There's that it? Oh no, the greens. All right, what are we gonna do with these greens? I have this large rectangular planter. It's meant for a deck. I think somebody must have given these to me. Maybe I bought them somewhere, I don't remember. I sometimes plant herbs in them, does well with herbs. And I don't really have a deck railing for this to fit on. Well, the railings that we have are old and they need to be replaced this year, so I'm not going to go and hang anything off of them. I think though that these are just going to go in the greenhouse, probably outdoors during the day, in the greenhouse at night. They've already been hardened off. And what I'm going to try and do is break these into a couple of pieces. These I know are root bound, so we'll do what we can with those. I have a whole bunch of these white plastic trays. I think they may have come from the grocery store with sausages in them or something. They are small but fairly deep relative to their size. So this is not actually all that bad. I'm gonna see if I can break it in half. That's where this thing comes in. This is way overkill for this project, and I'm gonna put on a glove. Trying to figure out how to do this without breaking, no, that's not safe, without destroying any of the top growth. There, there we go. That's just going to give it a little bit more room to spread out. Perfect. I'm just going to give these a little bit of space, not a ton, maybe 1.5 inches in between. I'm going to plant them near the front, and then I think I'm going to put the green onions towards the back. Or maybe the green onions will end up being the front side. Now, I know what these are. I don't really need the tag anymore, so I'm going to bring those indoors for when I seed my next round, which I should do right away. Now let's do the same for this lettuce. This is a lot more delicate. Oh, it's really wet. Oh, there's no holes in that one, that's why. So So this is white Boston lettuce. There we go. I just need to try to fill around the front side. There we go. So these are cut and come again varieties, which means I can snip off a little bit for lunch and I can stop buying greens at the grocery store. And the green onions, these are old seeds, so they came up a little sporadically. I would have liked to seed them way thicker than that. Oh, not bad. I don't want to dump this much potting soil onto the ground. So these don't have a ton of roots. They're pretty forgiving. I'm just going to gather them up. Oh no! Oh, I got dirt in my basket. In hindsight, I'm thinking it would have been easier to grow these in plug trays and then I could just pop them out. And then this is an easy thing to actually direct seed some more of these in. So I think that's what I'm going to do, and we'll try to keep this planter going for a little longer. The other trick that this watering can has, when you flip it over this way, all of the water pours from that spout here, but flipped up like this, it's all going to come out of the rows, which is way better for small seedlings. Oh, apparently I had that backwards. There we go. Yeah. Break time, I think. I might eat lunch out here today. See you next time.